welcome to another episode of Loud Pigment, our youth-led podcast brought to you by FBYC Creative Action for Conservation. And today we have Ziqing with us, who is a 2025 Future Blue Council member, who is actually from Europe, from Berlin. And today she's going to be sharing all about her journey as a writer, climate activist, and a incoming student at Princeton, majoring in environmental engineering. So she has a lot to share with us. She's one of the most impressive, I feel like, people that I've had the privilege to meet because I was also on the Future Blue Council interview. And yeah, it's a nice full circle moment. So yeah, hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing so well, and thank you so much for that really generous introduction. It's so nice to be on this podcast, and I'm really excited for our session today.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm really excited as well. So the first question that we usually ask is, what is one book, podcast, or media piece that lives in your mind rent-free?
That's a good question. I think at the moment I am reading *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari, and it basically tells the overall history of mankind and how we as a species has so far progressed, all because of our abilities to create stories and theories that thousands and even millions of people believe in. And what I realized reading this book is that we've only really began dominating like the world as like, the primary species because we are able to cooperate in very large numbers with people that we don't even know, on the opposite sides of the world because of these central beliefs that we have created and currently adhere to. So like for example, the law or like country borders, so to speak of, because these are, physically invisible, but we all believe in it as a society, and it's what really got us to cooperate with each other. So that book was really eye-opening and inspiring and taught me a lot about like really fundamental things about humans and our existences in the world.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And I do agree. I feel like we're so interconnected to nature and we're our nature, sort of. Yeah, and that brings us to the second question. What is your favorite water animal?
I love that question, and it relates so much to Valseed as well. I think at the moment I really love sea turtles, and I think in a way I can relate to them because they take a really long journey. I mean, they start off from like land, but they have to, venture into the very unpredictable ocean and travel thousands of miles, but they somehow always find their way back home. So I really hope to relate to them on my journey to Princeton this fall. As someone who has never been to the US, never been to the North American continent itself, it's kind of frightening to go on that very long journey, but I really hope I can make a second home there and also reconnect and rekindle with my home back in Berlin, and connect still with my friends here, even though it's such a long journey away.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure you'll find the most amazing people there. So yeah, don't even worry about that. Yeah, and is there one thing that makes you happy right now?
Yes, and I can honestly say freedom from the IB exams. It has been quite a torturous month. The month of May, doing all the, I think, over 20 exams I had to do for the IB May session. So it's just been amazing to have the time to just literally watch TikToks and scroll Netflix and find all the new shows that I haven't been watching so far. So yeah, I love my freedom so far.
Yeah, I can relate to that for sure. But yeah, I feel like having the time to also relax and kind of enjoy your life is so amazing and important. Yeah.
Definitely.
Now, let's talk more about your journey. Like you mentioned, you have this very interesting journey. Where did this environmental advocacy and this passion came from?
Of course, yeah. So, to start off, I spent my very early childhood in Beijing, specifically during the time period that the city faced a lot of heavy smog. At the moment, it has gotten a lot of better. But at the moment, at the time when I was back in Beijing in my early childhood, there was a lot of smog. Because of this, my sister developed asthma, and I had several severe breathing and coughing issues as a kid that has all, thankfully left as we moved to a new environment. So, speaking of, I moved to Germany in 2016 when I was, I think, 7 to 8 years old. And it truly made me realize the environmental conditions I grew up in before then wasn't really normal, or to say, and distributed evenly throughout the world. So I think growing up and having that change, geographically really showed me how many of the environmental issues that some communities face isn't distributed equally and it has, hidden economic and social barriers. And so like that in the end really introduced how complex the climate issue is today and how certain areas of the world are truly targeted and suffer more because of these factors that they can't change, so to say. So then from then on, in sixth grade, that's when I met Bauxite. I was a really avid painter and drawing like a artist at the time. And it was also during quarantine, so I had so much free time to do. So I was just drawing and painting every day. So then I stumbled across their annual artist competitions for environmental advocacy, and that's when I joined that. And it was only because of their art competition that I realized you can actually use artworks to promote for the climate and for, more environmental advocacy. So that is kind of where my environmental advocacy journey started.
Such an impressive journey. Wow. And I feel like you having that really personal connection to these problems and that personal desire to change something is so special. And thanks for sharing that. I feel like so many people can relate. And you kind of were able to create art from your own like feelings and worries. And that's beautiful. Like when you're able to really put your emotions into art, it's something beautiful. And I'm also glad that Bausi kind of you were able to discover Bausi because I feel like Bausi really does give this platform to express yourself creatively and Bausi was also very lucky to have you on the console, that's for sure.
That is so sweet. Thank you.
And talking about the console, can you share some of the projects that you did to that I think that you think might have helped you get into the console?
Of course. I think one of the very key projects I did was start the Art and Climate Club at my school in grade 9. And I think what was, what perhaps caught the eyes of the Bouncy team was that this was a club that was primarily inspired by Bouncy itself. And I even wrote them an email. This was long before I planned to join the Future Youth Council. I wrote them an email in grade 9 saying how their annual contest inspired me and to start this club. So I think they probably remember that from that email I wrote before I even applied, like a year before. But basically, what this club did was we created a lot of artworks and protest pictures that were used at the Friday for Future protests that were very prominent, especially right after COVID at the time in Europe, because of, the movement started by Greta Thunberg and other activists in Europe. So in my school, a lot of the students and staffs went on these protests, and our club helped to make the posters that were presented at the protests by our community. So that's what we did in the Art and Climate Club. Unfortunately, nobody's continuing it, in my school after we graduate, but I hope that other initiatives start up by the young people in my school. Additionally, I think my experience as a youth ambassador for the Duke of Edinburgh's Award Germany also helped my to get the role at Bauseed, primarily because my job there as, the youth ambassador really mirrored the tasks and priorities that the Future Youth Council focuses on for Bauseed. So what I did was for 1 year, I served a 1 year mission at the Duke of Edinburgh's Award Germany to kind of serve as the youth face for the award and to promote the award for more youth participation in Germany. And we similarly, like the Future Youth Council, we had monthly meetings of 2-hour sessions. And we also spoke at different events and environmental organizations, environmental conferences like Alcoy and YouthCon. What we did was we promoted the award there. We tried to get more youth and young people and teenagers to join the award at a very, very low cost. And so the advocacy nature of that role kind of translated really smoothly into my role as the Future Youth Council member for 2025. I think lastly, one last thing I want to mention was I am a very avid writer. I think my interests in art kind of progressed into writing, and I had a personal blog. I still have it at this moment called Arc Inspires, and I basically write about environmental initiatives that uses civil engineering to make our urban environments greener. And I also wrote 2 books. I wrote an anthology using an architecture anthology based on some of the articles I wrote for Arc Inspires. And I was writing a mystery novel for 4 years at the time because I was so bored in COVID. So, because of my writing interests, Balsi could see that I really wanted to write for their blogs as well. So that's also a part of me that I think worked really well for my role at Balsi.
I love how you mentioned your books, just like like something, an additional factor. I'm so impressed. Is there a way for the viewers to read your book somewhere?
Of course, thank you for asking as well. You can search it up on Amazon. So it's on most of the um big publishing house, like the big publishing websites on in the internet. So Thalia, which I think I'm not sure if it's only prominent in Germany, but Thalia, Amazon, Hugendubel. Yeah, so these are only things I know of in Germany, but Amazon is like the most biggest website you can find it at.
Okay, perfect. And you did mention that art played a huge role in your activist journey. And yeah, it kind of played the most prominent role, I would even say. But my question is, what role does art play in your personal
It's
life?
a great question, and I love this question because I can talk about it as a hobby instead of as like like a job on the side. It plays a very important role in my personal life, and in fact, I think it is really more important, more so than even in, as me as an activist, because it was my personal interest in art that got me into environmental advocacy. So I was first and foremost a artist and, did art as a hobby before I did art for environmental advocacy. So I love drawing and painting in my free time. And because of the freedom I have now post exam, I am doing a lot more of that than I did during the IB exam sessions. And I'm definitely getting back into drawing, painting, oil painting even. And I never stopped writing. So I've been always consistently writing throughout my high school years, and I'm still contributing to my blog posts. And I'm hopefully going to write for more magazines and even article pages in the future as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's so great to see like how passionate you are about it. So that's really beautiful. And you did say that you wrote several blocks for Bausi during your consul term. Is there one that you're particularly proud of and you'd like to talk about it?
That's a good question as well. I think in the very beginning, I wrote a blog about coastal ecosystems and coastal communities and how they uses architecture and civil engineering as a way to really adapt to the environment they are at. Because unlike communities like purely on land, those that live by the sea or live by like a river, obviously they suffer different different environmental like um, so they suffer different climates and different changes in the environment throughout time because of like, changes in tides, changes in the sea levels and rising sea level, which is a very prominent environmental issue of today. So it's really interesting. In the article, I talk about how interesting it is that they use architecture and civil engineering to combat some of these issues that they are facing as coastal communities.
And and you did mention, which I was really surprised to hear, that you initially did not plan to kind of apply to American universities, but after Bausi you did. Can you share more about that? How did like Bausi, the console, kind of change your perspective, and how did this journey go from applying and then getting here?
Definitely. I think I am really grateful to have met the council and was on the council during my junior year. So that was like the year before, application started. And I think it was just having good connection with many of the council members that were across the world and even particularly in the US that got me more interested in applying to the schools in the US. And I also, was in contact with some of the alumni of the Future Youth Council Balseed, and some of them went to really really inspiring schools in the US. So that was kind of what opened the door for me and gave me the confidence to in the end explore that avenue of education, higher education in the US.
Is there like an advice that you would give to all the students who are applying now or who are also applying as international students?
That is a great question. I had to think about this because I want this advice to be memorable. Hmm. I think what advice I would give to people who are applying to college in the US, especially to is to see it as if it's like a scale. So like let's say on this side it is accepted, this side it is denied. and to view the admission cycle and the way that the admissions officers decide on your application as like a scale, where every good thing about you is like a little stone that tips your scale to the favor of getting admitted. Because what you have to realize about the admissions in the US, what compared to like Asia or Europe, is that it isn't like the grades that solely determine whether you get in or not. It's like a very holistic idea. It's a very holistic process, which was something that took me a long time to wrap my head around. And to go back to the scale, what this means is that because it is a holistic process, your grades matter only a fraction, right? It only tips your scale in favor by a little bit. And so your extracurriculars have to also tip it further and further. So it is very little tiny things that add up that ends up getting you admitted. Also, I want to say, because I don't know what happens in, the admissions, like I don't know what happens in that room that they decide the decisions, but I want to view it this way so that it is a better way to understand how this cycle is holistic. So for people applying, I would like I think the students shouldn't focus solely on one thing or the other. I feel like you shouldn't be too anxious if your test scores is a little bit lower than the average, or if your essay you don't think wasn't that good. I think overall, it is like the overall package that gets you in. And on a similar note, I think students especially should be aware that ultimately sometimes what determines who gets rejected or denied or like accepted is a very little thing, right? It's like a marginal difference. So they shouldn't take rejections that seriously. And in fact, this is quite personal. In fact, Princeton was like the only university I got into in the US, right? I applied to 15. So that just goes to show you never know what is happening behind the rooms, and you shouldn't take rejections that seriously because it might just be one tiny thing that determines whether you get in or not. And sometimes that is fully outside of your control. So I think going through this whole process, you should just go in with a very strong heart, with a very strong belief in your abilities to succeed at any colleges that you end up in. And I think that's the most best way to go about this process.
This sounds so beautiful and so like heartwarming. And yeah, for everyone who's also kind of in the same boat, yeah, that's such an amazing advice. And I can relate to that because I was also applying to American colleges and it was also something that I really wanted to do. And it also didn't really work out for me. But I feel like the experience and the skills that I've got, like writing essays, trying to kind of create those like connections between my hobbies and my passions and just like also getting to know other people who are applying. It meant so much to me and it was like even more important than like the results.
Definitely. I fully agree with your points there as well. I think also getting rejected is a very, very beautiful thing. And it's getting rejected so early on in life, it sets you up really well for, rejections you will face later on because everybody faces rejections at some point. So I think, yeah, I think the whole journey and the, in of itself really builds your character.
For sure. And is there a one like memory from the Future Wave Council that you appreciate? Is there like a, one favorite thing about it?
That's a really good question. I think one memory I appreciate, maybe this is also because of my memory loss, short-term memory loss. I think what I remember most was the final like meeting and the final project we did together, which was our like Future Youth Council magazine. And I think it was so cool to work with all of our council members on this magazine that took, I think, 2 months at a time to write. I think it's over 50 pages long, if I remember correctly. And we basically shared different moments of our year together and we shared the different projects we did, both inside the council but also outside in our own terms. And it was so wonderful to work on this final project with everybody together and to really see our whole journey as a council from the beginning to end, like in the form of a magazine. So that was definitely one of my favorite memories from Bathseed.
Oh yeah, I saw that magazine. Yeah, for everyone that you can check it out on the website. It is an amazing magazine. Is there one advice that you would like to give to youth across the world who are trying to kind of start their journey as environmental activists or just like advocates or creative artists who are just like who want to transform their passion into something even bigger?
Yes, so I've had time to think about this, and I think my advice would be that you don't really need the right resources or the right connections or even to be affiliated with the right organizations like Bowseed to really start environmental advocacy and to call yourself an environmental advocate. I mean, sometimes you might hear the word environmental advocate and change maker and think that that is a very big and very strong and very scary word at times because you think of people in these roles who are very famous and who have so much power, to influence people. And it might seem very intimidating, but I think the young people of today really have to know that you don't need any of that to start off. You just need to have determination, consistency to start advocating for environment. And so, for example, you can, start an Instagram account with 0 followers and just post consistently pictures you draw for, sea turtles or different marine animals as a way to start being an environmental advocate. And what people really have to get is that these famous advocates and people who are, online, they all started from somewhere. So they were never that big when they started. They always started with 0 followers, with 0 people to help them at times, right? So my advice would be to not be intimidated by the people who made it in the end and to really just start and focus on your own path. And the most important thing is that you are able to be consistent when there's nobody listening to you, or you're able to be consistent where you don't have that much support. And in the end, because of your consistency, you will meet, the whole community, the really inspiring community of environmental advocates who are there in the world to support you.
That's such a perfect advice, and it's so amazing to see how like passionate you are. And yeah, that brings us to the final question, which is there someone that you'd like to say hi to or kind of give this shout out? It can be anyone who would watch this podcast, your family, friends, or even council members. Yeah, just anyone you'd like to say hi to.
Yes, so I would love to say hi to the current Future Youth Council members. I saw the post introducing them on LinkedIn and on Instagram, so I'm really confident that you guys will work on really amazing projects that we did and very form long-lasting connections with each other, as I have did with fellow, like a few of my council members actually. So on that note, I would also like to say hi to my old council members and my own cohort at the Future Youth Council of 2025, and it is so exciting to talk to so many of you individually, to hear your plans for, university or gap years. And it is also really exciting to continue working with you guys on projects beyond the Future Booth Council times. So, for example, me and Suhani, we are actually going to start a series of webinars using literature to advocate for environment. So it is just amazing to, work with my old cohort on different projects together, even after Future Booth Council.
Oh, that's so amazing. Yes, definitely like staying connected to your council members is one of the most important things you can do. Like with me, I'm connected to like I guess most of the council members of the 2023 Future Youth Council, and it's such an amazing like connection, friendships, and just so many things. Yeah, that was it, and it was such an amazing interview. Thanks so much for this podcast, for your time, and for sharing all these amazing tips and advice for all people. I feel like it was so helpful and so inspiring as well.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast again. It is my first podcast ever, so really, this was such an amazing opportunity. And I'm so glad to meet you because I didn't know that you were actually the reader of my, application for Future Booth Council. So this is like an amazing full circle moment.
And it's definitely not going to be your last podcast, that's for sure. It's going to be your first.
Oh.
We're more are coming for sure.